Wow.
Hi.
And I think that's going to be all about me. Welcome to Christy.
Thanks for the feedback.
I don't know.
And then walking in tardy without a pass is Christy Blanch.
Yes. Well, I went to 06 because that's what I wrote down,
Oh,
and that's the tick.
not quite the
So
same.
I know, I was just like, should I? But then I had to like fight my way out, which is not easy because there were free posters involved. So hi, late as usual. My name is Christy Blanch. I was a late addition to this panel, so I thought I'd just carry that theme.
Fair enough.
See, thinking are we just introducing ourselves? Yes. Okay. I am getting my doctorate in educational studies. My dissertation is on comic scholars and why we do what we do when there's really no benefit. And I use comics to teach. I do several MOOCs, which are massive open online courses using comics. I did one through gender through comic books and social issues through comic books. We had about 15,000 people in those classes all over the world. It was kind of cool. Consumed my life. And I own a comic book store, and I also write comics. And that's it.
That's enough.
So you're really not qualified to be on this panel. is what you're saying.
No. I'm so glad there's water.
Oh, okay. Steal that microphone over there.
Oh,
I'll be back.
okay.
And so, in fact, Christy is telling the truth. She was a late addition because she saw it on Twitter that we were going to have it. She said, oh, I wish I'd known I was going to be in New York. I'd have to be on. I go, please be on it.
Again, because I was late deciding.
And she was gracious enough to join us today. So thank you. Thank you
You're
all.
welcome. Thank you.
All right. Well, and thanks for coming. Oh, no, we're not done.
My shop.
Oh, it's a perfect time for you to hang out PowerPoint. Well done.
Of course.
Okay. Oh, there. Yeah, that's who I am. That's right. I forgot.
Good tell about you.
I'm also the creator of Solution Squad, a math-based superhero team, and I teach, 7th grade math, and so it fits right in with that. And there's my contact information too. We'll get back to that more later. Sometime today, PowerPoint. Wow, really? There we go. All right. I wanted to start out by talking about Young Justice, since that's the thing that Chris is the most known for. One of the things that I've done in my classroom, and even though I'm a math teacher, I'm heavily invested in reading because my class is actually called Math Problem Solving, and the first step in solving a problem is to understand it. Reading is very, very important in my classroom. So I also run a comic book club after school. And I have what we would call reluctant readers in there. They're in there because they like cartoons and comics and superheroes and things. So the question then comes up, how do we get them to actually read? And so Young Justice I've found to be the best cartoon to engage kids. None of my kids dislike it. I'll even show it in my regular class and kids like it. It features, how many of you have heard of Young Justice? How many have never heard of Young Justice? Okay, a few people. So for those of you who've never heard of it, Young Justice is essentially a cartoon about the sidekicks of all the major heroes of the Justice League forming their own team, and they run covert missions on the side. And it never fails to engage my students. So we watch an episode in class, and one of the brilliant things about it, and this is something I'd like Chris to talk about, is that the comic book that goes with it, and you can see here, I think that's the cover, is that the third trade, Chris?
Second trade.
Second trade. And the comic book actually interacts with the TV show. The comic book takes place within episodes and between episodes and is considered canon. It is considered part of the official story. So could you talk about your involvement?
Yeah, so I'm forever clarifying to people that, no, I didn't work on the television show, I drew the comic, but the two are very intertwined. The bulk of the run of the comic book was written by Greg Weisman, who was one of the two showrunners for the TV show. He's probably best known as the creator of Disney's Gargoyles. Like most of his series, Young Justice has a very complex continuity that Greg tries very hard to keep consistent, and they would develop backstory for characters and ideas for things to flesh out the timeline of Young Justice. That produced way more ideas than they ever had the episodes to fit those ideas into. So the things that didn't fit into an episode of the TV show became really useful fodder for creating storylines in the book. And aside from how much more the intent was for the comic to be part of the canon of the show, it's actually, you can really track how it fits into the show, because for anyone who watches the show, you know that when a scene begins, they put a little timestamp that says where and when a scene is taking place. The comic book does that as well, so you can actually see very specifically how everything threads together. There's one episode of the show where somebody shows up and asks where Robin is, and Kid Flash volunteers that, oh, he's off with Batman doing the dynamic duo thing. There's an issue of the comic that you can see that the scene has the same date as that scene in the show, and it opens with Batman and Robin fighting a bunch of guys at Cape Canaveral. So Greg liked to do that kind of thing a lot. He enjoyed complaining about the amount of work it took to keep it all straight, but he loves doing that kind of thing. And so that was a lot of fun. And, you know, the thing I love about Young Justice as a property is both the show and the comic were written to be very all ages friendly, but by no means is it written as anything that's talking down to kids. It's very narratively complex. It's very sophisticated in how it portrays the characters. And I've never seen another superhero show that goes as far in having real emotional consequences to the adventures these characters go on. Even when the mission is successful, it sometimes comes at a cost. And they will explore how the characters' relationships are impacted by the adventures that they have. And I think that's something that really drives a lot of the emotional investment people have in the show, and why it can be really connect with young viewers and readers.
Mm-hmm.
How many teachers do we have in the audience? Excellent. How many language arts teachers do we have in the audience? Excellent. I just like to point something out. There is foreshortening. Not foreshortening. Sorry, that's Chris's category. There's foreshadowing in the first episode of Young Justice that pays off in episode 23. Yeah, that's not a typical cartoon. There's a throwaway line. It's one of the very first lines in the first episode, and it pays off 23 episodes later. So it is a cartoon, but like Gargoyles, which was one of my favorites back in the 90s, it's a very mature, overarching, tightly plotted thread that it really does pay off in an adult way. So it's good actually for everybody. Kids will like the action. Adults can really follow the storyline in a way that most cartoons don't pay attention to. And I put Young Justice at the top, even over Batman the Animated Series, which is generally everyone's favorite animated series as far as superheroes go. I'd put Young Justice over that for this reason as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that it's written, you know, because they were trying to be conscious of it appealing to a wide spectrum of ages. There's a lot of action, and it's fast paced to the point where there's a lot that'll appeal to a younger fan, but you can really go down the rabbit hole of complexity and meaning in the stories. You know, it's just you know what level you're appreciating it on.
And just to close on this subject, perhaps, Young Justice is still on Netflix. It's streaming, and the more people watch it, the better chance there is of having another season. I'm sure you've seen Stream Young Justice and Binge Young Justice, the hashtags. But not only that, but the books are easily available. At least the first two trades. Is that right?
There are 4 trades. The later ones are out of print and are getting hard to get. So you know, we would love for DC to not only do new printings of the existing material, but you know, Greg and I would love to do more comics. We'd love to be doing them now, with or without the TV show returning. Although there's, you know, hope for all of it coming back. It's very seriously being looked at. So, knock on wood.
One of the things you can do, though, as a classroom teacher, if you don't have if your librarians are stubborn about graphic novels, as some of them are, mine fortunately are not. Mine love graphic novels and will order everything I ask them to. It's amazing. So yeah, yay. But one of the things I do in my classroom with my comic book club is I use Comixology, and I buy them digitally, and I use the guided view technology to go one panel at a time, and we do live readings in class where every student takes the part of one of the characters. one of the great things about this is once they've watched the show, they know what the voice of each character sounds like. I make them imitate the voice of the character because while they're reluctant readers, they don't want to read, but once they start pretending that they're the character and doing the imitation, they're not focusing on decoding anymore. Now we're trying to get emotion into it, and that's where it wins. So that's what I'd just like to say about Young Justice.
I can't tell you how sorry I am. I've never gotten to witness this.
It's really fun. I'm not whelmed. I'll just say that. Okay. Janet, tell us about Pride and Prejudice.
Sure. Oh, sure. Well, my degree is in English. My degree is not in art. And I may have written the geekiest email in the world to Marvel Comics to let me do 2 of their Jane Austen adaptations. Got to do 2. But one of the ones I never got to do is Pride and Prejudice. And of course, Pride and Prejudice, as I get older, Persuasion, but Pride and Prejudice is still my favorite. So recently I had the opportunity to do an illustrated Pride and Prejudice. It's not sequential, but I got to do the different scenes that I really, really loved from the book. So that's all right. No, everyone knows what Pride and Prejudice looks like, right? In our heads. So it's a little bit of a different story. With the graphic novels specifically, though, Emma and Northanger Abbey that I got to do, I have found that a really good adapter, the person who does the script adaptation, can work in the story beats for a very dense novel for a lot of readers, and can get the same, much like a very good film adaptation can do. Can get the major beats of the book and can encourage kids to go ahead and try to read the book itself. So, yeah, it's for me, I've found through a lot of interactions with readers that it's a good way to get them invested in some of these very classic, difficult to read characters, difficult to read storylines, and get them invested enough to try to read something that can really be a little difficult and challenging for them.
And you also did part of the adaptation of Once Upon a Time?
I did. Another Marvel project. Marvel is doing adaptations. Well, they're not adaptations. They are. They are much like the Young Justice stuff. Background stories of characters in the Once Upon a Time TV show. I did. There was one. They're anthologies, so it's very short stories for each one. The kids can read like 30 pages, and that's it. The first one was all about a single character. The second one that I worked on was a series of 4 different background stories, origin stories a lot of times, or just information about the characters that they would not otherwise have for the TV show Once Upon a Time. I got to do the Mad Hatter. I got to introduce characters that they will never see in the TV show. And I find that type of book also, it was exactly what I was thinking when you were talking about, is a good way to invest kids into the reading end of it. They're drawn in by the TV show. They really like these characters. They want to know more about these characters. Now you're invested enough to try to read something.
There's something very powerful about having them already invested in the
Yes.
material and being able to say, here's where there's more.
Right, exactly. All these questions you had about this character, I'm going to tell you some more stuff that
Yeah.
you would never have found out through watching the show. And you can't find out from watching the show.
No.
It's never going to be there.
Okay, I'm going to save my teacher friends for last because they're my aces in the hole. So
Absolutely.
I'm going to go all the way down to Christy now. Christy, tell us about Charlie Wormwood.
Oh, it's not for grade school.
No. But how about the storytelling techniques?
Yeah, storytelling. Well, the reason I wrote this book is I taught in prison for 8 years. Taught in prison for 8 years. I have to be careful about that because sometimes I'll say, yeah, and when I was in prison, I learned this. Some people I let think that. So I'm a comic scholar and I sit on the board of the Newly Formed Comics Scholar Society, or Comics Studies Society. And a lot of times I'm reading things where people are dissecting comics and they're saying the size of the panel means the more time passes. And I'm like, no, that's not really it. Sometimes it's like, you know what would be really cool? Let's do this. So I figured the best way would be to write a comic. So I thought, what do I know? Well, I know about prison. I'll write about prison. So that's why I wrote this book. But he is a teacher in it. And he gets paid less than, not very much. So it's all a good thing. What did you want to know?
That was it. Oh,
Okay.
well, like the throwback
Yeah.
techniques and things like that are incorporated.
Oh, and there's also, if you go to throwbent.com, some of the comics in there, you can use in your classroom for kids and things like that. What's really great about Throwbent, which is kind of on its way out, but it's still up, is that one, it's free, and two, all of the comics in there are made for digital. They're just not pictures of comics like you get with a lot of digital comics. So you can really, get the kids, to show them, how you can use things in computers, because that's where everything is right now, and show how these different storytelling techniques can happen. So, also, teachers, go if you want to use comics, if you want to start a comic club, go to your local comic book store and talk to them, because they will, if they're good, they will donate books. Go to them early. Like in February, and say, I would like some books for free comic book day. If you get to them early enough, they can pre-order them for you, and you can get a bunch of them, and then they will give them to you for free, and you can give them out to your kids and use them in the classroom. So, and if one says no, find another one, because there are plenty of good shops out there. And if you can't find one, let me know, and I'll just ship it to you. So.
Okay. Now, Supergirl and Theresa. We met 2 years ago right here at New York Comic Con. In fact, it was almost 2 years ago to the day. And so they came to a panel that I was doing on Solution Squad, and you see that Supergirl Smiles is actually dressed as one of my characters today, which I got to tell you, as a creator, the best thing ever. I've seen photographs of the costume, but I hadn't seen her in it until today. So it's like, yay, this is awesome. So tell us how you've used comics in the classroom to try to engage your students.
Okay, so as the years go on, I've kind of gotten the reputation. Are you the teacher that likes comics? So this year I'm a little bit more confident with it. So day one, I'm like, yes, I am the teacher that likes comics. Hello. So I gave them the Solution Squad on day one. I put different characters' names on index cards, and we sat in a circle on carpet squares on the floor, which, believe it or not, high schoolers actually really love, because they haven't gotten to do it in a while. They like to regress. And so everybody picked a character. They didn't know who they were getting at the time, so that kind of added a little bit of mystery and excitement to it, and it kind of just got them, on the edge of their seat at that point. I even had one card that said sound effects guy. So somebody had to say vroom, thrash, throughout the thing, and it really, kind of brought them out of their shell. It's a really great icebreaker on the first day of school, and it really sets the tone of the classroom. It's not, a lot of kids come in and they're like, oh, I hate math, it's going to be a bad year again. And this year I'm having an awesome time, because it just sets such a positive light. Like, okay, this was great. I got some points for reading today. What's tomorrow going to be? Let's keep on this track. So I've been off to a really good start.
Theresa, I'm going to change my backup battery while you're talking. So.
Okay. Then hopefully there'll be no feedback this time. I've done a couple different things. I have worked with kids to write their own comics using software like Comic Life, or I had third graders do explorers and make comic panels based on the explorer, and each panel had to be a different characterization or part of their history. I've arranged for, we have a local Comic-Con, Tidewater Comic-Con in Virginia Beach. We are a non-Common Core state, and so I've been able to work with the local comic book stores, as you had suggested, and with the Comic-Con to bring comics into the school. The image that was up on the PowerPoint, we had a cosplayer come in as Spider-Man on our open house night. So the first night the kids came to school, they were being handed comics. And so that was very exciting for them. I've done it on, handed out comics for trunk or treat. Sometimes I can use them as rewards. We have Achieve 3000. If anyone uses Achieve 3000, it's all nonfiction, and it's kind of tedious for the kids sometimes. So one of the rewards they get for earning so many 75s or 100s are comic books. And then they're a little more excited because they get to read something that is not quite so intense. The hardest battle I've had to fight is I have those teachers who swear that it's just terrible to read comics. My librarian is one of them, who thinks that they don't read the right way. You don't go left to right, top to bottom. But in there, you have to teach the children how to read them. You have to talk about what each one of those panel designs means, what each speech bubble means. And I don't think that's what's going on. So I'm kind of always pushing a little bit. My biggest push is, and one of the other staff members says, I come in every day dressed professionally with just a little twist on the professional. And the kids pick up on it, and they say, oh, well, if my teacher likes it, maybe there's something to that. And they'll come up to me with Avenger stuff, and they'll mention things that they've done, and it helps me to make a connection because I'm not a regular classroom teacher. I don't have my own set of students. Instead, I have 700 students that want to make a connection, and if comics is the way to get them there, that's the way it is. I'm in a transient place. Kids are moving all the time because of the military, and sometimes comic books are a great place to escape to, and I'm just hoping to give them one more way to fulfill their dreams, I guess.
You know, if I can jump in, given that I don't come at this as much from an academic point of view, I mean, one of the things I'm hearing is that if you're trying to encourage kids to read, aside from the things that I always heard about why it's great to start kids on comics, whether it's simpler or it's less intimidating than a big block of text that you'd have in a prose book, that there's things structurally about comics, the fact that it's all dialogue and sound effects as far as the textual part, or the fact that you're likelier to find material that has an existing connection to something that's already in another medium, that the comics present opportunities to engage kids creatively with the material in ways that you might not have with a prose book. Okay.
Well, and I also like that I've been told, oh, well, they just look at the pictures. They never read. They can never tell me what the whole story is
I
about.
really wish they did. I feel like they spend like 10 seconds on the picture and then they move right on to the text. So.
Well, and sometimes they do, but I think at one point they get to, well, wait a minute, what's really going on here? Or they see one word that maybe is not a word they're used to seeing, and then it starts there, and then it gets bigger from there, and then they suddenly are consuming these comics.
I do feel like we should also maybe talk to your librarian about this left to right, top to bottom, because it does go left to right, top to bottom.
Something's wrong if it doesn't.
You know,
there's a really challenging page if it's not going left to right, top to bottom.
Well, and you know, some of them you'll see going down. I understand.
Yeah.
So.
Right. Let me bring that back. Yay. Maybe it'll work better now. The battery's not low. Okay. So speaking of the way to read comics, one of the things that I have included is how to read comics using my comic. I have a friend named Tracy Edmonds who is a lesson planner, and she used my comic to basically give a little primer, a 3-page primer, if you will, on how to read comics, explaining what panels are, explaining what word balloons do, how to read left to right and down, up to down, and also explaining that gutters are where the imagination takes place. And what's our buzzword for gutters? Inference. We're learning inference because a lot of the action takes place between the panels. Not everything in the story is going to be overt and right there. Your imagination has to do a little work too. That's what makes comic reading, unlike novel reading and other prose reading, is that a lot of the information is not seen or even written. We have to fill that information in for ourselves. And this explains what word balloons are. I made sure that when writing my comic that we had all kinds of balloons there. Word balloons, thought balloons, radio balloons. I even included a Silver Age whisper balloon just because I wanted to make sure I had one in there. We talk about sound effects. All of these things are critical, and there are many teachers even who have never read a comic. It's always shocking to me. It's like to hear. I grew up with educational comics from 1st and 2nd grade even, and a lot of the teachers I work with have never read one and are not interested. They think it's all superheroes, which obviously it's not.
It's also a little hard for them to sometimes be able to read the comics because they don't know the vernacular of how you're supposed to.
And so that's why this little primer, it comes in handy. We have once again the sound effects, what captions do, what splash panels are. And so it's just a little 3-page PDF, and I've made it available on my Teachers Pay Teachers page. It's free, so just go there, download it, and feel free to share it with people.
And you would really be surprised at the people who don't know how to read comics.
Yes.
The first time I taught in a college class, I grew up reading comics, so I was like, everybody knows this. They were so confused. So the next semester, I had to teach them how to read the comic first, and just make sure that they knew.
And I've also, when I'm teaching word processing, sometimes I work with the kids on using speech bubbles. And I take that opportunity to, okay, well, this isn't really a speech bubble. This one is for a thought. You know, is that what you're trying to use? And so I use those different shapes in Word to kind of plant the seed for those types of options.
One of the things I've also done with my comic book is I have turned it. It was originally in fact, I think I have a copy of it somewhere. It was originally just done in portrait orientation like any other comic book. And then after I published it, I said, you know what, I really would like this to work digitally as well. And so I went back in with Photoshop, I cut it up, I took Illustrator, re-lettered it. And so now I have these techniques where before this would be a simple one-page sequence.
You just passed it.
So it's right there. So this is a normal one-page sequence right here. But what I did using Photoshop, I didn't want to reveal the second panel here. And so on the click of a button, that pops up, and his word balloon, his response, dude, I mean, do it, I so totally do. And that is what he sounds like. And so then her word balloon pops up in response. So in that way, the teacher can, if you're using this as a demonstration in class, the teacher can control the pace of the story and doesn't have to reveal everything. The same way on a page, sometimes you look ahead, you cheat ahead a little bit, and you lose that sense of mystery. But using these techniques, which is sort of like what Comixology does with their guided view, but this is more specific, and my future stories beyond this have all been written to take advantage of this format because I want it to be used in the classroom. Yes, I know I teach math, but I have my students, just like with Young Justice, I have my students read this aloud, and they take parts and they read it like a play. We call it Comics Out Loud. Reading with Pictures has a celebration annually where they have Comics Out Loud, and hey, please tell us how this works for you.
There are a lot of really exciting possibilities as far as the different format of presenting a comic digitally versus on the printed page. I mean, the simplest thing just being that you can shape your page to the aspect ratio of a normal computer screen, which is landscape instead of portrait.
Yep.
But, you know, you have things like that. So, I mean, like when I was doing Young Justice, about halfway through the series, they were putting more emphasis on the fact that there was a digital version released at the same time as the comic. And all that meant for us is they wanted to make sure that every page could be bisected vertically so that the top half could display on the screen separately from the bottom half, which meant all of my layouts had to have a gutter that ran horizontally through the center of the page, which can be a limiting structure when designing a page, but it helped it work better digitally. Whereas when I was doing, I did a story for DC's Batman 66 book, which they really put the emphasis on the digital version, that they went so far as to have us turn in some of the figures as separate elements from the background, or have alternate versions of like an arm position or something, so that the digital presentation, like what you were just showing, Jim, could be revealed in stages where a panel comes in, then the dialogue can come in, and then maybe even like an element of the panel changes before you progress on to the next thing. And the one thing that's kind of frustrating about that is there's a print version as well. The print version, by definition, had less content than the digital version because you can only present one final version of the page.
And I'm sorry, I went off script a little bit to go digging through Photoshop. Sorry about that. But just to prove Chris' point, the story that I have that follows the one in my original comic has, let's see, I think this is the one, it's made for digital presentation. So you see here, yes, they fly around in the coordinate plane. That's a little math joke there for anybody who teaches math. But
math, reading, and puns, everybody.
Same.
We've got everything.
So the pages advance like that, and like Chris said, they're formatted for half pages, which is sometimes a little bit limiting. And then they go to here. So you're getting it presented to you in this format. But the thing is, you can also then cheat a little bit, which I did, because I watched what they did in the DC books. And let's see, lettered pages for print. Let's see if that's the one I need. And there it is. Oh, nope, this is one. It's a different page. No, that's not going to be the one I want. So when you put two of those together, essentially, that's what it's going to look like. And it looks sometimes a little bit obvious and awkward. And then if I have the right one, let's see. Pages for print. Watch me not be able to even find it.
While you're looking.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Christy.
Hello. Another fun thing you can do for, I do this even in my college courses, but you can do whatever. I take a 9-page, one page that has 9 panels on it, that has no words. And then I cut those up, and then I have the students put them in the order that they think that they go in, and then they make up a story. And then they have to present that story to the class. And what it really shows is that how different, the order, there's like something like 9,000 different stories, different combinations that can be made. And it really gets the students thinking, oh my gosh, I didn't even think of that. Why did you put this first? And it's just really great. I use a thing from the Hernandez's Flies on the Ceiling, but it's probably not something you want to use. But there's plenty of those out there, and it's really great. It really gets the kids thinking, and it gets them to think how to use, what the art shows instead of just the words, but how you can really, really just tell a story with just that art.
Raina Telgemeier might be a really good one to break up.
She would be amazing.
That would be amazing to do that with. Yeah.
This is finally what I was trying to show you. You can cheat a little bit, and what I did was I took those 2 half pages and I bled the background down a little bit behind the bottom, so now it looks like it was originally composed for an entire page. So you can play with it a little bit in the format, but it is easier for me to demonstrate things by projecting them up on my dry erase board or your smart board if you happen to have that technology too. So one of the things I would like to point out as well, let me go back to that. Oh, from the beginning, really, genius. You would think I've done this before. Another thing that I do in my comic is I have origin stories. Once the characters, like The Incredibles. The Incredibles was one of my favorite superhero movies because they don't tell their origin story. We jump right into the adventure and let's go. It's very brief as where they came from. My comics is the same way. We don't talk about where their history is or anything like that, except for a brief introduction. Here's this character. Here's this one. Here's this one. At the end of the book, if you flip it over, I have their origin stories told in prose in the back. Once they've learned who the characters are and they're engaged with them and they like them, then they have to read 5,000 words of text. And that shuts those librarians who say, oh, that's not real reading, right down. So they basically have to earn that background. They need to read the hard stuff. As I wrote it at an 8th grade level. So I wanted to challenge my 7th grade students. Yes, ma'am.
Like the parts in Watchmen that are written.
Yes.
Right.
Do you know if there are other comics like that that have longer written parts as part of them, like Watchmen and this?
The new book by Scott Snyder and Jeff Lemire is
Yeah.
going to be like that.
Yeah.
There are quite a few. Anything by Alan Moore is going to have something in it.
There's also some books that do experimental things with it. If you want to go with like a Hugo, like Hugo Fabre, what's his name? Sorry, where it's like long swaths of text and then entire sections where it's just graphic images. So there are ways that people are playing right now between novelization or novels and.
There's that new book that Dustin Wen drew with it's like a
Fabre.
Gotham Academy sort of thing. What was it?
Yeah. I think. Is it not?
Oh, with Jeff Lemire and Dustin?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Descender does that.
Descender.
Yeah. And it's almost like Diary of a Wimpy Kid, where sometimes it's comic book page and sometimes it's prose.
That's another good example. Diary of a
Yeah.
Wimpy Kid is another
Yeah.
great one.
Which one? Sorry.
Diary of a Wimpy Kid.
Yeah. My daughter loves those.
Justice is that too.
Yes.
And doesn't he have a new series coming out? Dog Man or something like that? There's another set
I think
of,
so.
of
there's also, I mean, I think also a lot of times if you find like a nonfiction where there's narrative patches to it, there's going to be a bit more of a text block to read that's interspersed with things, and it's necessary. And they're often very entertaining, so it's not a difficult read. It looks like it's just a little paragraph, but you got them to read a chunk of text.
And I suggested what you did with the 9 panels, with taking your Sunday comic panels, and for younger kids, taking their Sunday comic panels, cut them up, and then students can do the same thing, just in a smaller chunk.
And because I'm all about shameless self-promotion, it's not really, I'm not going to make any money off of it. I'm offering everybody here a free download of my digital comic. If you go to solutionsquad.net/free, the download code is never sleeps, because this is the city that never sleeps, and you can download a copy for free. You can check it out for yourself. And I have lesson plans. I have lesson plans that go with my comic as well, and so they're on Teachers Pay Teachers, as well as the free How to Read Comics is there as well. So just search for Solution Squad on Teachers Pay Teachers. You can download that one for free, and then use my website to get the free download. So I'm not charging anything.
Just one thing I wanted to mention that I don't know that might have occurred. I'm an educator, but I also have a son with Asperger's syndrome.
Yeah.
And one of the values that I see in comics is kids on the spectrum often need assistance in understanding facial expression and body positioning.
Yeah.
To to discern their mood or their reaction to things. And comic books are such a fabulous way for them to exercise that ability and to ask them questions. Well, how do you feel this? What is this character showing you? How they feel?
And it's a slower visual medium, right? So they can spend time analyzing it as opposed to going through.
And of course, and that's another way in an inclusion classroom that you can have these children actively participate in discussions of character development and different kind of things. So that's a fabulous way to help support whatever book you're reading that has that dynamic.
I've also heard great things about using them for ESL because you can have a lot of contextual reference for the word. They can match it to what the actions are, whatever. So that's another. I mean, there's a lot of really interesting uses once you start digging in.
We were talking before about the comparison of comics to prose, but the thing about comics versus other visual mediums like TV or film is that it is static images, which allows you to control how much time attention is focused on a single image, as opposed to something that just plays by at a predetermined pace.
Well, and the inference as well. The panel borders with the inference, where you have to connect the two images. It's not spoon-fed to you. You have to figure out sometimes what's happening between the panels are as important. So, sorry. Off on a tangent.
Go. All right, I guess at this point, do you guys have anything more? How about some questions? Oh, they're going to blank us. They're not going to ask a single one.
No.
We've answered every question you people could possibly have.
Yep.
They're all like, don't make eye contact.
When does issue 2 come out?
Oh, well, I thank you for asking. He's not a plant.
How much are you paying him?
I know, right? I'm just going to confess. I'm a teacher, like most of you. I spent over $10,000 producing this one comic book. It's self-published. I did it myself. I hired my niece, the artist. I paid her $200 a page to draw it. I paid pretty well, right? I paid pretty good. I paid pretty good, especially for India that nobody's ever heard of. Selling a single comic book is a good way to lose money. So what every person in the last 3 years, I published it 3 years ago, every person in the last 3 years who's come up to my table, librarians and teachers alike, have said, I need it in hardcover. At least I need it in softcover as a trade. I said, okay, I'm not going to do another single issue then. And coming in January, I will have an entire 144-page book. And yes, it cost a whole lot more money. And it takes time to save that up. I'm trying to make people understand that. It's like, I am not Marvel, DC, or Image. This cost me a lot of money. How much did I pay you, Janet? No, Janet and Chris both did images, both did pictures in the book, and they're professionals. I will not ask for free favors. I paid them. And that's what you do. What's that?
It's appreciated. Thank you.
That's what you do. But a lot of people don't understand. They think, say, oh, I had this great idea for a comic. Hey, you draw. And it doesn't work like that. You have to respect people. This is their living. This is what they've trained to do. The reason why they can do an image in a couple of hours or 8 hours or a day is because they've trained and had that experience and the education to do it. So I'm always all about respecting our artists.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very
So
much.
thank you for asking that question, because I had to praise them more, because they did a fantastic. I didn't include it here because your villain is a spoiler. The
Oh, I can't do it.
the identity of the
But it was a
villain is a
fun
spoiler.
villain, I'm telling you right now.
Yeah.
It was a super fun villain.
And Chris redesigned the coordinate plane. Yes.
Puns
Do you
galore.
have recommendations for adults, ESOL learners, mostly from a Hispanic background?
It's not necessarily it is probably adult. One of my favorites, and I don't know that they completely pulled it over. Archaea at one point did a comic called Feeding Ground. It's werewolves, so a little violent, but it was a flip book. One side was all in English, and then they retold the story in Spanish on the flip
cool.
side of it,
I
which
want
was
that.
amazing. When they went to hardcover and printed it, I think they left the Spanish version out. Yeah, but it all takes place. It takes place with it's people being trying to cross borders. It's all like in that, like crossing the borders between Mexico and the U.S. There's a lot of pertinent. It was, and it's all half Spanish, half. That one's a great one, but it is werewolves, so maybe not for children necessarily.
Yeah.
On your math comics that you did, I do fourth grade math this year.
Mhm.
I've done I'm special ed, so they put me wherever they need me.
Right.
I just looked up. It says it's like 4 through 8.
Yeah.
Is it with the comics too? Is it like use this issue for this lesson kind of a thing? Like, okay, so it'll match up.
All right. Since you gave me the opportunity to talk even more about myself,
Here
it is.
I was like, this is awesome.
It's grade 4 through 8 because in Common Core, prime numbers are grade 4.
Right.
And in
Well,
my
that's
state of
what I was
Indiana,
thinking,
Common Core, it's like we have Common Core Light. We made some adjustments back to what we used to use before Common Core.
And now we're not Common Core anymore either in Jersey.
And
So.
prime numbers went back to grade 7 where they were when I wrote the comic. I was very upset when Common Core came out. I was like, wait, now I can't even use it? What? And now this book is all about identifying prime numbers. And then I have 25 pages of lesson plans that go with prime numbers.
So issue 1 is all the prime number one then.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, 'cause
You-
I know we do a huge thing on that. Like,
Yeah, it shows how to generate a list of prime numbers. The characters fall into a trap, and they have to generate a list of prime numbers to defeat the villain by getting out of the trap. They have to enter a code in made up of prime numbers. So the students actually have the activity. The students decode the same message that the characters are decoding. So at some point during the digital presentation, you stop. You hand the students the activity, and say, "Now you do it."
And then is it on? I mean, I do resource room, so is it like on a level that those kids could do? Okay,
Absolutely.
Cool.
It's a step-by-step algorithm on how to create the list of prime numbers, and it's
Okay.
my daughter could do it when she was in 3rd grade. I'll just say that.
Right.
But my daughter's pretty bright.
Should we also note that Diamond Comics does an awful lot of lesson plans
Yeah.
and work with various comics, so you can go on their site. I'm not exactly sure where it is, but I know that they have people actually do lesson plans out of comics, so that's a resource that you guys should use.
And Andrews McNeil does the same thing because
Andrews
my friend
McNeil.
Tracy, friend Tracy, who does my lesson plans with me, did a lot of their lesson plans for like Big Nate and what are their other titles? Some of the Peanuts
Chris,
things
and the
and
Chris Giruso.
Chris Giruso,
Yeah,
G-Man.
Yep.
She does lesson plans for all of that stuff. It's on Andrews McNeil's
I was just
website.
thinking, I mean, math is like in reading. We were saying grade.
Right.
I use her stuff
Right.
all the time for readers workshop.
Right.
It's great. But for the math, it's always like, where's that other?
He's one of the few people that do math. It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. No, this is fantastic.
And
Yeah.
Teresa, talk me up.
Oh, I was just sitting here
'Cause-
thinking that it's not just one. You can use one page out of the comic or one
Well, yeah, I
panel.
did. Yeah.
No, but listen. This is really not what you're asking.
Now I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be saying.
Yeah, you did.
Everything is very multi-level. Every character and every page, there's more than just one use for it. Everything has depth, and so you really have to pay attention to the depth of the characters and the story to really get everything out of it.
Thank you.
Kind of milk each character. Was that what I was supposed to
Yeah,
say?
you-
Oh.
we had just talked about it outside before we came in. I give myself a few minutes to talk about my project, but it takes literally an hour for me to sit down with teachers who teach math, and I can show them every last detail of what I put in there. Okay, I'm not comparing myself to Alan Moore at all, but you know how Watchmen, every time you reread Watchmen, you'll find something new. you'll do that in my comic too, but it's all math.
Right.
I hid math everywhere. There's math, little Easter eggs hidden in all kinds of little places. It's not great storytelling, but it's useful in the classroom. So that's what she's talking
So
about.
the math is no matter what level the kid is, like in fourth grade, the math. Is
Right,
still
right.
going. Okay.
Right. There's stuff with the X and Y axis that kids are doing in 4th grade,
Right.
and there's a Pythagorean theorem which kids are doing in 8th grade.
Yeah, that's not.
So there's a mix. There's a mixture. I try to spread it out so everybody has something.
Just to be able to say that, one of the one phrase that works so beautifully with teachers for kids is just saying, what do you notice? And the child will have a right answer every time. So even those that may not, it gives everybody an opportunity to access the material or what they're observing. And I just think that that's fantastic that, comic books will give you that avenue, and that's really wonderful. I had to throw that out.
If you look at the background of my slides, if you look really closely, the Solution Squad symbol actually tessellates.
Oh, cool.
I mean, that's just something I threw in there. And if you look at the logo, you can graph this logo on the coordinate plane with only 5 fractions. I mean, I just do stuff like that. I mean, I worked hard to make it as complete a thing as I could. But I'm not a reading teacher. I shouldn't say that. I minored in English. I majored in math. I'm one of those weird people. I majored in math, but I like to write, and I minored in English. So I throw my writing in there too. So I like to do both. I don't like to pigeonhole myself. You've not said much of anything.
There's a question, right?
Oh, there's a question.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask.
Yes, sir.
I was just gonna ask. Are your kids ever going to get to see you in costume? Are
Me?
you ever gonna appear in class?
No.
Oh no.
He is a math teacher costume.
I'm 51 years old.
No. I want
No.
to know if she's gonna appear to her students.
Oh,
Yeah, costume.
that's a great question.
So I've done some work with just some photos, and I just made a simple calendar just for every month. And the kids, they're like, "That's you," and I deny it, and it's like a fun little game. And I'm like, "That is not me. How would I get in a calendar? That doesn't make any sense. I just found this, guys. I just hung it. I thought it would be useful." And they knew I was coming to the conference, and they're like, "So is Absolutia gonna be there, or?" And I'm like, "She might be there. If I see her, I'll try to get a photo with her, so that you guys can know we're not the same person." So,
That sounds like
Yeah.
Photoshop waiting to happen.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
There's also an anime club at my school, and they're kind of getting into the cosplay thing. It's just becoming such a big culture now. So a lot of them had asked me, "Is there any way you can bring in some of the stuff that you do and show us to get us started? Just simple like wig styling, makeup, armor props, things like that. Just what to do when you're at a convention, how to act, because socializing and kids, it's all new to them. So I'm pretty excited about that, to be working with it. And
It's new to some adults too.
Yeah.
To be honest.
So and tell everybody how many Instagram followers do you have?
like 10. A composite number, maybe.
How many?
I don't remember.
It's over 30,000,
Yeah,
right?
it's
So yeah, there's a good reason that she doesn't want to advertise.
yeah.
It's like, yeah. So
Yeah.
it's a tough balance sometimes. And how many of you have trouble getting comics into your classroom with administration and stuff like that? Anybody? Yeah. I don't have that problem anymore because when I got to go here, and I've been at C2E2, I've spoken in Las Vegas at the American Library Association. As soon as you get some legitimacy, they let you do stuff. By the way, I'm missing parent-teacher conferences right now, and I'm on conference leave. Woo! Not even a personal day. So that's a winning thing right there. You have to fight for it. That's my point. You have to fight for it, and the more convincing you are, the more. And that's what I thought you were actually talking to me about costumes.
Yeah.
No, that won't happen because
No.
if I did that, the people who do take me seriously would no longer take me seriously because they already say I'm a big Batman fan. They already call me Batman. I go, don't do that. Say I'm a professional just like you are. In fact, I've been, but I mean,
Mr. Wayne to you.
but they don't do it in a don't do it in a respectful way. They do it in a
Right.
mocking way.
Right.
And so I'd say, no, don't do that. It's like I have friends who do cosplay, and I would respect the heck out of them. It's not something I could do because I'm fat, obviously, but it's like, it is what it is.
I enjoyed taking Dress Like a Word Day a little far last year. I dressed in steampunk. And that was very unusual. And the kids are like, "What is that?" And a couple of them actually went home. I said, "Find out about it." So it was just another made them do the research, and
Yeah.
they were excited about
Yeah.
it. So
If I could have pulled it off in my youth, I would have done it.
And if I could just add, if you guys are looking for a good observation score, you know, administrators, they're like, oh, I gotta observe a math class, yawn, and they come in and they see you're doing something like this. I got an email, I guess one of my principals was just walking by the hall, and he's like, I've never seen kids so engaged in a math class. So it was just like such a, you know, a great thing. I printed out the email, I have it on my wall. I'm like, yeah, I'm awesome.
There you go.
So yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Now, you're talking about how we use math to teach and all these different things. Do you ever use like comics like that have history in it? So like Peter Panzerfaust and teach World War II or something like that?
Nathan Hale's Hazardous Tales.
March.
My
There's
favorite.
also a book called Magneto Testament that just went back in print, and it has an entire teacher's guide in the back of it. And it'll tell you page by page why they chose certain images. And it'll has all sorts of resources and all sorts of lesson plans. And they just put it back out, because I would never loan my copy out, because it's the only one. I knew somebody was going to take it. But it's amazing. It's all, if you want to know, you know, if you're teaching anything about World War II, go for that. It's amazing.
Even one of the most exciting books from Comic-Con this year, that was March won the Eisner. You wanted to use civil rights movement?
Yeah.
Amazing.
But yeah, yes.
Is that for history, also things like social topics, so
Yeah.
racism, not
Yes.
bringing the comic book in, but actually talking about how comics were racist or sexist in the beginning. My teaching intro is social justice in New York, and it's a very dawn when a white guy steps up in front of a bunch of young black children and basically says, okay, this is why the world is racist. They're not interested in listening. And if I bring the comics into the conversation, then they are open to listening to it.
Yeah. Okay, I saw it. Yes.
Oh, the question for the educators. How do you get kids into non-Big Two comics? Like, I'm a librarian and I try and do like as much indie collection development and stuff like that, and like bring stuff like Lumberjanes and Comic Robo into the library, but it's never. I feel like it's harder to get kids into comics that they don't like already know of.
Well, the kids were saying they loved that Suicide Squad movie that came out this summer. I said, may I interrupt? I actually have the comic. And they're like, that's not Suicide Squad, that's Solution Squad. I'm like, no, this is even better. So you just tie it in. And even one of your characters is the poser, you know, and I think you make a reference to the Riddler in that, which they're familiar with, and, you know, just kind of hooks them in a little bit.
Yeah. A lot of my kids don't even know what the Big Two is. They don't even know the difference between Marvel and DC characters. Some of them will. I mean, you'll see fanboy rage when somebody says, well, you know, I saw Batman and Thor. And it's like, no, they're not even in the same universe. Some of them get upset. Others don't even have the slightest inkling that they are two separate companies. So I wouldn't even address the Big Two. I would just say, this is an awesome comic. I like this one. It's like Batman, but it's this. And just hand it to them. And they might not even realize that they're different.
Yeah, speaking not as an educator, when I'm talking to somebody about, you know, they want to get someone into comics or whatever, you know, the thing to me is it gets so individualized. You know, if you find out what kind of movies they like, what kind of television that they like, you can find material that matches that genre. And then they don't really care what publisher it's from. It's just like, oh, that's the kind of story I like. So it's a little more individualized and requires a little more research. But I mean, to me, that's the most effective way.
I mean, it's a medium. It's not a genre.
Yeah.
So I mean, you can find anything you want to find. Whichever you're going for.
I've used it mostly just to connect with the students, and when they find out, like maybe it was the other panel I was in that I was watching. If you make that connection with a student, they'll be more interested in it because you are. So if it starts with the Big Two and they're big into Avengers, okay, well, I didn't recognize that Avenger. Like I like Black Widow a lot, or a character like that, or from elsewhere in the universe, like Jessica Jones. I mean, you can take that to the next level. Oh, have you read about? It's almost like what we've done with books in the past. You choose one author and you really like that author, so you'll read everything by that author. So once they find one storyline or one character, kind of go with that, and then introduce them to the next one as you go along. Plus, like I said, with the steampunk, they have a lot of different steampunk stuff now.
Yeah.
There's Rough Riders. They're bringing in more history, so there's a whole lot more choices to bring in.
Have we helped you to? I'm sorry.
They're good. Go.
Have we helped you to determine how you can grab more reluctant readers? I still say it's like video. They love video, and there's the Young Justice video game too, which is also in continuity. Hook them any way you can. And then hand them the book. They'll want more. They always do. They'll want more, and you say, "Here's how old I am." I actually saw the Batman TV show when it was first on TV in the 1960s. When that show ended, guess what? I was 4. When the show ended, I was 4 years old. Said, "Where's my Batman?" They handed me comics, and there it was. I was done. I was hooked, and there I was reading, just like that. Yes.
How much comic book illustrators do you recommend for like a 20-page comic, like per issue?
I couldn't hear it.
How much to pay an illustrator, or?
That too, and how much like do you recommend? Do you recommend big people work on the comic, or people?
That's a wide open question.
Any, and there is no wrong answer to that. Really.
Yeah, I mean, the reason that you see things get split out into this assembly line kind of process is it's hugely time consuming. So yeah, that's why more people is better for some.
I did one. I did one sequential one for Marvel that was a monthly, and I did everything except write, and I was pulling like 80-hour weeks.
Yeah,
it's
ridiculous.
Really rough in that time frame. And I'm not as proud of that work. I would have put a lot more time into it. So that's why it gets broken out. Or you can do something with a longer time frame and do everything yourself. I mean, it depends on the project.
Okay, well, if we've answered all your questions, I have bookmarks for everybody. Make sure you come up and get a bookmark. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate coming.
I want a bookmark.
Please.
Absolutely awesome. I didn't want to steal too much time. The first time I utilized comic books or graphic novels was when I was introducing my class to the Chronicles of Narnia. And I said, okay, well, here's the Chronicles of Narnia, but there's more than one way to tell a story. And then I showed them the graphic novel, and then I showed them the large, huge illustrated picture book. And we have the werewolf. That's pretty good. Do you have anyone?